So, everybody who's joined so far, thank you very much. My name's Tim Campbell once again. I'm a proud member of the AMS family, and we're welcome that you've all come to join us today, talk about a very important subject around green skills and social mobility. Just to let you know that the session is being recorded, and I want to let everybody who's just recently joined to know that apologies, for some reason there is a camera gremlin that doesn't want me to appear on screen. That might be a good thing, as you're probably eating your lunch, and I don't want to disturb whatever you're having this afternoon. But apologies in advance that the screen will be cutting out intermittently, and I don't seem to be able to rectify that. Anyway, we're not here to see my face anyway. We're here to speak to an amazing panel to talk about the very important subject of green skills and social mobility. Today's subject is an intersection, I think, of two very crucial challenges facing the UK today around social mobility and sustainability. Two subjects you might have heard separately but not together, and I think it's important that we're coming together to have that conversation today. We're joined by an amazing panel of experts, and you'll see them on the screen. I will briefly introduce them in their titles, but through the conversation today we're going to get much more time to hear from them. First, we obviously have Lauren Duncan, the UK public sector at LinkedIn lead. Thank you so much for joining us, for Lauren. Gaia Caruso, the Director of EDI and ESG at Sparta Global and UN Women Delegate for the Commission of the Status of Women. Amazing CV, which I'm hoping she's going to get to tell us more throughout the course of conversation today. And our very own David Ingleson, the Director for Energy Engineering and Industrial Sectors at AMS. And he supports lots of our clients with their strategic talent agendas and has a real clear insight about the topics that we're speaking about today. So, we've pulled together some experts. We've got a dodgy cameraman who's going to try and facilitate and weave together the conversation. But the rationale for our discussion today is really within the context of the UK government's commitment to reaching net zero by 2050. The ambitious target, I think, and strategy aims to drastically reduce greenhouse gases and emissions. But that doesn't really translate into some of the biggest hurdles that we're seeing with achieving this actual vision, which is actually the skills gap. And that's where I think the opportunity is, because if on one hand we have an ambition to get ourselves to net zero by 2050, we're not really discussing at the same time in equal enough measure how are we going to find the skills to fulfill the roles that are required to bring that transition about. And that's why we have this panel set out for today. Once again, the session is being recorded, and if there's any questions that anybody wants to pose, please put those in the chat facility and we'll get back to those. The recording will be sent to everybody after the particular session, so don't worry if you missed the beginning. And once again, for those who just joined, I apologize for the camera going in and out at my end. It's nothing wrong with your screen, it's something definitely wrong with mine. Anyway, so let's kick off. Lauren, I'm going to come to you first with a question, if you don't mind. Don't be so shocked. It's just because you're on the right of my screen and you're the first one I can see.
Oh, I was expecting it. Don't worry. That's fine. That's why I'm here.
That's what we love. That's what we love. The Scottish energy, we've got it in there, right? So for us, with regards to the conversation today, how do you define green skills and green jobs, and how are those skills different from any other jobs that we might be looking to fulfill?
Yeah, it's a really good place to start, Tim, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to be here today. LinkedIn's got a lot of thoughts on this particular area, and it evolves all the time as well. But I think that one of the places that I typically start with is the jobs element. And we have two different categories of jobs when we talk about green skills, and that is green jobs versus greening jobs. And I think it's a really good way just to interpret what we mean by the difference of the skills and the jobs themselves. So if I just quickly explain what I mean by a type of job, a green job for me would be something like a solar consultant, that type of role, very specific in what they do. Whereas greening jobs are jobs that we're now starting to see are having to develop green skills in. So that's things like maybe facilities managers, anyone in health and safety, policy advisors might be a big subject matter for anyone in the government space right now, where green skills are becoming more and more important to those particular roles. They don't define the roles, but they are part of their work and their evolving work. So we tend to start around there. And then I think just going back to your actual question to try and answer that, for me and for LinkedIn, I think that green skills are wide in scope. And they are things that you can utilise in your role just now in the particular industry you're working in or in the particular job that you have. But there are also skills you can take away with you as well. And they'll vary from technical to soft skills, but they have very high scope. Whereas a green job will be very specific to the nature of what you're doing right now, to the industry potentially you're in as well, and to the organisation you're doing as well, and might in some instances require more technical skills, perhaps through accreditation, perhaps through examinations and so on. But that's how we would define them. But it's ever changing, this subject, and will continue, I think, to evolve as we do more with that space.
And with regards to those changes, are you...
Oh, sorry, Tim, I lost you there. I think, has Tim gone off the line?
I think he has, yeah.
No, I think
I'm so sorry. Back. Oh, he's back. He's back. Sorry, Tim, I didn't hear your question there.
No, it's not. So, with regards to those skills themselves, are you seeing a massive uptake in terms of the promotion of those skills across LinkedIn?
Yes, I think that's. I think the whole kind of premise of today is born out of some of the insights that we're seeing in that particular area. So it's no secret now that there is a higher demand for roles in this space and requirements in this space that's outstripping actually the talent that's coming onto the market now as well. So one of the stats I'd probably just share kind of early on in the session is that when we poll people on LinkedIn globally, only 1 in 8 people feel they have green skills. So even if we're talking about a green job or a greening job, only 1 in 8 people feel they have those skills. And what is probably more pertinent to the social mobility aspect of what we're talking about here is that if we look at Gen Z, an area where we've got huge opportunity to grow in social mobility, it's only 1 in 20. We only see that growing to 1 in 10 by 2030 without intervention. And the final thing on that is really just the gender gap that we can see there as well. So if we look at females specifically, that 1 in 8 increases to 1 in 10 of females that feel that have the green skills capabilities to continue on. For men, it's 1 in 6. So we're in danger of extrapolating a real social mobility issue in gender alone, just with those green skills. So we want them. We're asking for those skills. We're advertising these jobs, but we as a global entity have to put some real concerted effort into developing those skills now and for the future as well.
Thank you so much for that, Lauren. And to highlight the intersectionality that is transpiring across those is really important. And I suppose, Guy, I'll come to you then, leading on from that. Can you tell us some of the existing initiatives or programs which are aimed at providing training and education in green skills to try to get some of those diverse communities interested in the area that Lauren just highlighted?
Absolutely, Tim. And I love this question because I think we can't possibly have this conversation as a society, as industry, as government, really. We cannot have this conversation without really focusing on the intersectional approach. So from my point of view, I am one of the directors at Sparta Global, and Sparta is an HTD organization where HTD stands for Hire, Train and Deploy. So it's a very particular model, a model which is high in social impact that we've really built to address this problem specifically. And it's a model that I am genuinely passionate about because what we do fundamentally is we go out into society, we find talented people from either disadvantaged or, generally speaking, diverse backgrounds with the potential to actually succeed in the green economy. We then recruit this incredible talent. We run our own academy. We train in these incredible individuals in in-demand digital and ESG skills, and then deploy them on site with our clients, particularly within the public sector. And I think this particular model of working is incredibly powerful from an intersectionality standpoint. At the beginning of 2024, our CEO actually met the King to collect the King's Awards for Enterprise in 2024, which we won in the category Promoting Opportunity. And we got this incredible opportunity to talk about an initiative we ran last year, where we very much rewrote our social mobility agenda as a company. We proactively went out into societies. We targeted recruitment in areas of the UK that traditionally are low social mobility areas. We proactively worked with young people from low income families, from low socioeconomic backgrounds, specifically focusing on mentoring and coaching talent from those backgrounds, brought them into the academy, trained them in those digital green skills, and then deployed them within the industry. So it was a fantastic way to really democratize access to employment in that respect. And what I love about this particular project we run, it's a fantastic way of removing those very systemic barriers to entry for disadvantaged talent when it comes to the skills of tomorrow. So we do not require a degree, for example, when we hire. We will specifically hire someone who has the potential, the attitude, the aptitude to succeed, but perhaps they do not have the financial opportunity to go to university and get a technical degree in this subject. We will hire them anyway. We'll train them internally. But we also pay our trainees whilst they're in training, which is quite transformational for someone who wants to get into this type of employment. So it's a wonderful way to really change, I think, the rules of the game when it comes to who are we recruiting, how are we recruiting strategically for diversity, and also how can we retain that diversity of talent in this sector.
So that's a broad range of areas that businesses are touching on, right? In terms of trying to attract the talent and making sure that we're paying the right wages for the talent is also important, because sometimes, particularly when you're talking about entry level positions, they can be lower. But David, I know a lot of our clients are struggling with the push versus the pull. Is it a pull that they need the skills or the diversity that's pulling the people in? And are the people in the marketplace, the next generation of talent or the existing individuals, pushing to say, I want to work in this particular space, this is of real interest? Where do you see that dichotomy like leveling out?
It's a really fascinating conversation, and can I be cheeky, Tim, and just jump on something that Lauren was saying as well,
Please.
Which I think links to this, because the whole topic of green skills, and I found it fascinating that men think they have more green skills than women. There's probably something going on there that isn't actually accurate, but anyway, we're all far too pleased with ourselves, maybe. So for me, green skills are very, very broad, and I think there's a lot of candidates that we deal with that don't even realize they have green skills. And it might be because they're in what Lauren described as greening jobs rather than green jobs. You know, it's very easy for you to think of yourself as having green skills if you're a wind turbine operator. But maybe not if you're the guy who or lady who comes to dig a trench for a ground source heat pump. You know, that's a manual labor skill, but it's actually enabling the green economy. And therefore, for me, it's directly associated with possessing green skills. And that person might not necessarily think they've got those skills. And I think they have to kind of think of themselves in a slightly different way. And the person who kind of books that appointment for us, say for an installation of a solar panel or something, that person is adding to the green economy and has green skills. So it's a really, really broad topic, and I think people can develop green skills relatively easily. I think the barriers to entry to building green skills is pretty low. You know, we carried out some research as an organisation about with business and talent leaders about what industries required green skills, and it turned out that pretty much every industry needs green skills. And that was a really interesting insight for me, because, you know, if you think of finance, really, do you need green skills for finance? Well, yes, because that's where a lot of sustainable investment is going. How do you decide whether something is sustainable? So I think it's a question of making sure that people, and you know, LinkedIn have got fantastic options for people to think about how they document their skills. I think it's about how people promote themselves and rethink about what transferable skills they might have. But I think it's also incumbent on the companies that are out there that are attracting these people to start talking more passionately and in a more compelling way about why a career in the green economy is a fantastic place to be. And we see through Generation Z that there is definitely much more expectation that people will have purpose-led careers, and that's what they're wanting. So it's about organisations coming up with really compelling and differentiated employer brands and becoming more attractive in those candidates' eyes. And to be honest, I think there's a lot of organisations that could do a better job, particularly in the energy industry. I really do.
So I think I want to come definitely onto the point about the generational differences that people are seeing. And Lauren, I'll come back to you in that in a second. But I suppose, David, maybe for the audience, you might.
I'm going to have to guess what Tim was going to ask me.
Is it possible, David? Sorry, that was me. Is it
That's
possible
okay, good.
Bring it closer to home for people in terms of the types of jobs that you're actually seeing employers actually recruiting for?
Sure. As far as our clients are concerned in the energy industry, it's all about the infrastructure. So, for example, if we look at the electrification of our world, if we look at renewable energy as a whole, it's all about building the infrastructure and the installations to make sure that everything can be much more clean. And what we see is wind turbines, we see the grid being electrified as much as possible, replaced as much as possible to actually deal with all of this. Carbon capture and storage is another area where we're seeing burgeoning demand. And, thinking about storage systems in energy, there's so much going on. And in particular with our industrial clients, it's about how systems, processes, manufacturing can be decarbonised. So thinking about all the clean tech that's out there. Now, they're quite developed green skills, I would say, that typically require a degree in something quite technical. But if you also think about all of the blue collar jobs that are associated with getting that infrastructure in place, well, they're jobs that it might be a roofer who actually can start installing solar panels. It might be a labourer who can start, getting the infrastructure in place for all of this renewable energy infrastructure. So I think there's a whole host of transferable skills out there where people just won't think they've got those green skills, where they can be. And they can be thinking about having purposeful careers, purpose-led careers for the long term.
Let's hope us older folks like me also have purpose-led focus around what they want to do. So, Lauren, over to you. I suppose, leading on from David's point, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in this space kick off in regards to sustainability?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll just pick up on something David just said there that I'm very, very passionate about, and it's around kind of the gut-wrenching feeling towards green skills being a technical thing, but I actually think it's a mindset thing as well. So when I talk about green skills, I always say people will have technical green skills and they'll have just a way that they work that is green as well, and it's built into their mindset. So what I mean by that is it might be inherently built into your culture, your values, the environment you work in is green, not only just the business objectives and the skills that you need for an organization. So I think just to kind of, support your point further, I would say that, everyone on this call, everyone who works professionally, everyone on the planet has not just a professional responsibility to green skills, but a social a moral responsibility to it as well. And you can really shift your mindset into thinking that way. One of the things we talk about often with customers is that, is this something that you need to do or something that you want to do? And when you move the need to want as a society or an organisation or as an individual, that completely shifts the mindset in this space. And that is an emerging trend. I'm getting to your point, sorry, Tim, very slowly, that I'm seeing that, that people are now seeing it that way. And I remember when I first came into the workforce nearly 20 years ago, green was something that was, discussed, but it was very much here comes the green initiative, the rolling of the eyes. It's just something, cool and trendy to do. This is fact. This is scarily close to our, lives now. We know we can't roll back some of the mistakes we've made as well. So we need to start talking about it that way and not having it that kind of nice to have. It's something that I need to tick a box with, but it's important to what I do now. So that's definitely a big trend that we're starting to see. And I suppose that one of the things that we see in the Gen Z market specifically is that they rate this way higher than any other generation. So I think this is the first time that we're going to have 4 working generations together in the workplace. And what we are seeing, the emerging trend is that the Gen Z population will just not stand by and let this be a kind of nice to have. And I can't remember the stat off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it's 60%, but 60% of Gen Z would reject a job offer if they disagree with your green policies. So it's deeply rooted in what they do. But if we go back to what I said earlier on, they have the least amount of skills in this area. But another emerging trend that kind of supports this train of thought is the increase in training and retraining and embedding that into the workforce is certainly becoming a big thing now. Internal mobility is a huge part of recruitment trends right now. And what we're seeing from the new generation is that they're happy to learn these skills. They feel confident to learn these skills. So David, to your point about it not being that difficult, the newer people coming into the workforce right now feel that way as well. They feel, I think it's something like 85% of them feel really confident that if the training's there, if it's accessible to them, they'll be able to learn those skills as well. So the barrier might be something that we're constructing as people maybe that have been in the industry a bit longer, that it's going to be an issue. But they're certainly, keen to get involved in there. I feel like I've gone on a big tangent there, but just to kind of, think about the audience that's on the call today, and I think that something that I've discussed maybe more recently with my partners is huge emergence of things like policy roles in this area, but not thinking, Whitehall policy, thinking about rural policy as well, and looking out into the community and thinking about green skills, sustainability across, kind of all different roles. And then, kind of looking at traditional jobs in the workforce that we've got and how they're going to evolve as well. So again, to that internal mobility piece, what are we building into our HR strategies now that helps to retrain, redeploy people into our organisation, because they're going to be critical skills, kind of as we move forward. We're certainly seeing that as well. And then the biggest thing that LinkedIn's seeing in terms of a trend that maybe the UK is lagging behind slightly is the financial economy, that green economy piece. So what are we doing to develop our workforce, our skills, our future employees into that space? So we're thinking economically about our green initiatives as well, and how that's going to impact the UK's economy moving forward as well, which obviously is all inherently critical to public service and continuing to develop public service. So it's a problem for all, not just for maybe the few.
Well, I suppose the problem presents opportunities, doesn't it? And that's where lots of the employers on the front foot will be seeing, listen, if I can steal a march on this and attract those next generation of employees to my workforce, actually that will help prepare me for the headwinds that are coming around the corner, whether they be rural or regulatory in different guises. So thank you so much for that, Laura. And Gaia, I suppose to come back to you, if I may, the independent think tank, the Green Alliance, reports that 80% of current workforce will still be active in 2030. I know we've focused a huge amount of our conversation so far on the core Gen Zs that everybody talks about, but we still have employees within our existing workforces who could be upskilled or presented with new opportunities in this sustainable green economy that we're walking towards. What are some of the things that you're seeing in that, and what are some of the goals that Sparta's are helping organisations to achieve their goals?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I think you described it very well when you said the problem presents opportunities. Lauren talked about the importance of upskilling, and I completely agree with you, Lauren. And we actually find in our own experience, when we talk about green skills, indeed, so many of these skills are transferable, could be transferred, could be built upon. For example, we see skills like engaging with stakeholders, which are incredibly important in the jobs. When we think about the green jobs of tomorrow, things like planning, developing strategy, managing ESG projects, but also research, analysis, working with people, influencing people. These are all transferable skills. David said something very important. Whilst it is true that for some jobs, yes, a technical degree may be required, that's absolutely not true for the full spectrum of skills and jobs that we are talking about today. So there is a huge amount of work that can be done successfully within upskilling. The reason why I think the sort of model that we work within HDD or RTD, the reason why I think it's so powerful is because I think it does three things very well. It democratizes access to the skills of tomorrow. In other words, it really changes the rules of the game in terms of who gets to participate in that dialogue. And no, you don't have to have a degree. You do want to possess the right mindset, actually, as Lauren said, the right potential, the right attitude, but not a degree or previous qualifications for the sort of roles that we train for. The second thing I think the model does very well, it delivers scalable impact. So it's not a one-off initiative or one-off project. This is a scalable solution to really achieve that long-term impact, and to really have an impact on communities as well. You asked me about the gender dimension of the problem before, Tim. We've done something very interesting. A couple of years ago, we launched a program which is specifically dedicated to finding, training, and deploying women in this sort of skill sets. We called it the Athena Academy. So we now have an entire academy which is dedicated to finding women, often women from low socioeconomic backgrounds, and providing them with access to this skill set, and then supporting them into the industry. And the third aspect I love about this way of working, I think, is that continuous upskilling piece. And so the model we work within is very effective at promoting retention in that way, because it's that, it's an approach to learning that never ends in a way. So it's really focused on continuous upskilling and continuous learning and development. We, for example, run a dedicated engagement team which is entirely devoted to promoting that learning and development in partnership with clients in the public sector. So it removes barriers to entry, but it also promotes retention at the same time.
A very important combination there. David, coming to you then, off the back of that, if organizations are toiling with the challenges that Guy just shared with us, what have been some of your experiences of the challenges organizations have had to overcome to help them to achieve some of their sustainability goals? Maybe you've got some specific examples or overviews that you can share.
Yeah. For example, one of our pharmaceutical clients decided that in order for them to attract a more diverse range of candidates for some specific roles, they dropped the degree expectation, because when they looked at it, they didn't actually need a degree for the job that they were being recruited for. And this is going to be the case for an awful lot of green jobs that are out there. And there's also an awful lot of things happening within our clients where hiring managers are being asked to change their mindsets and stop looking at previous job titles or qualifications. And of course, they're still important. Wouldn't want anybody on this call to think, well, I worked hard for that qualification and it's worth nothing. But this is about broadening the market for opportunities for people. It's about making sure that when they're coming up with the list of requirements, previous experience that is needed for a role, that it's realistic. And I think given talent shortages in lots of areas, that's what hiring managers in our clients are having to do now. And it absolutely applies to green skills and green jobs as well. So there are plenty of examples of where job descriptions are being redrafted with much more of a transferable skills emphasis rather than things that will immediately knock a load of people out.
And we're getting, it's really resonating with people on the call, what you just said there, David, because we've got people saying about what are the things that organizations have to do around candidate attraction strategies to make sure that we're appealing to that wide audience who might feel, oh, well, it's in the sustainability field, I have to have a degree because that's all I've ever seen. What are some of the things that you've seen organizations change to make sure that they are attracting the next generation of talent in a more motivated way?
So to answer that question, I'd say that organizations that employ these people, that they're telling the stories about how they can offer, you know, those purposeful long-term careers and using marketing and advertising for good. Essentially making sure that it is very, very clear to any candidate that there are people like them who are currently employed by this organization, and the stories that are most powerful are the ones where actually it was someone who took a chance and as a result has thrived, and, you know, has taken the opportunity that came about and really thrived in that environment. Breaking a few of the taboos around, you know, certain organizations have a certain kudos around them, but, you know, make that application and don't be afraid, because I think there's going to be an open mindset to a lot of the hiring managers that are out there in the organizations that people would want to join. If there's still closed mindsets for hiring managers in the organization that you're applying for, you probably don't want to apply for that organization, right? So there is an opportunity for more open-minded employers to take all the green talent. There's a war for green talent now. That's the way we should see it, and make sure that you kind of take advantage of that. But just on that, you know, the perception of the candidate, be confident in making sure that you are bringing to life what you think are the transferable skills for any green jobs. And there are so many free resources out there where you can learn about what's decarbonisation, what is sustainable business management, what is the electrification of our world. All of these things you can start learning about. So I would say be curious, do lots of reading, get out there and just be an advocate for green, and before you know it, you'll be a passionate change maker in an organization that really values what you have to offer.
A bit like you, David, right? A bit like you. I like that. So, Lauren, for your perspective, there's lots of people, rightly, I think, asking the questions about the difference between university degrees and apprenticeships, which the latter seem to fill lots of the boxes that Guy was talking about, getting people to work and actually receive a salary at the same time. Are you seeing a difference with the amount of applications that are coming out for apprenticeships, and is that eating into the university cohort? How are you seeing that differentiate amongst your clients?
To be honest with you all, it's not an area of expertise for LinkedIn specifically. However, in a previous life, I spent many years working at UCAS, the University's College of Admission Service, so I can potentially answer this question quite well. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I should say I went to university, I got a degree in politics, hold for booze. I did not enjoy university. I don't think the skills that I learned there equipped me to go on to do the jobs that I've done later on, other than maybe some of the soft skills. But I do think there's a huge part of university degrees and lifestyle. It's a really important thing that we should not neglect. And I think sometimes when we talk about these subject matters, we can give traditional degrees and traditional studying a bit of a kick in the back that it doesn't deserve. So I think that there's always going to be a place for that. We will always need technical, regulated, most importantly, because some of the things we're talking about today require huge certifications, expertise that have been signed off by regulatory bodies, not things that you can learn potentially on your own, etc. So a call out to that first of all. But I think over the last 10, 15 years throughout my time in education, we saw a huge emergence of apprenticeships. But I think that I'm going to stay really high level with this answer. For me, it's about the accessibility of education and what suits your lifestyle rather than the type of learning that you're going to do. And what I mean by that is that traditional degrees, traditional university kind of lifestyle is one type of learning. It's a traditional format. You can do, kind of evening and online courses now, but a lot of it is spent face to face with a huge sacrifice of your time, meaning that working, supporting a family, whatever that might be, has to take potentially a back seat. However, apprenticeships, what they've done is opened up that social mobility piece. It's reduced the kind of pressures around the economic pressure of obviously the financial pressure of going to university as well. That's the big change, I think, that we've seen, kind of moving towards more of those apprenticeship type roles. I think just to add to that as well, I think that education's the big key to unlocking everything we're talking about right now, kind of really underpinning conversations in STEM subjects at high school level, even primary school level, around these topics is going to be something that it's not something to do just now for, a few years to tick a box. It has to become the way that education is treated. And then if it's okay, Tim, hopefully that's giving you a little bit of an answer to that question, but I just wanted to pick up on the kind of what people can do in terms of an organisation, kind of really being out there talking about this for candidate attraction, because that's somewhere that LinkedIn really does, kind of sit in that space and can help with. One of the things that we have noticed is that anyone who's got a LinkedIn company page that's on the call today, you will increase your followers by something like 75% if you talk about green initiatives on your company page. So 1 to 5 posts every kind of 2 quarters, that's going to generate you more and more people following you as an organisation, having sentiments towards you as someone who's in this green space before they even apply for a job, before they even consider you as an employer. They start to get to know you as an organisation that cares in this space. And the one last thing I might just slip in here, and I think some people are on the call that know me and will have heard me saying this as well. Another massive part of this is the simplification of language that we use when we talk about green skills. There is a huge risk of us over complicating with language what a green skill is by using big words like sustainability when you're actually not just saying what it is. What are you asking me to do? What are you asking me to understand in plain language? Because suddenly the light bulb goes on, it's more accessible to a larger audience. And the reason why I'm laughing is that many public sector organisations like jargon, they like an acronym, they're usually 3 letters. You need to avoid that when you're reaching a different candidate base, a larger candidate base, just to simplify that language and bring them into the fold.
No, it's a really good point. We spend a lot of time with clients actually articulating how they're going to present their opportunities to the market. So the acronym slap on the wrist that I've received several times, we definitely understand that one. So great point shared. And thank you, Claire Dove, for the highlighting about apprenticeships and also traineeships that are relevant for those who are early in the career journey, which I think, Lauren, you were touching on. David, I'm going to come to you in a second with a bit more we can do in engaging our actual clients and what you've seen. But Gaia, for your purposes, one of the points that Lauren touched on was about the skills that we can get people to come to the job opportunities with. In what ways are you seeing businesses actively support that training earlier on? Because sometimes people may not feel they have the skills, but you talk very passionately about working with people while they develop. Maybe you want to share some examples of how employers can do that.
Yeah, I actually think this is absolutely key, working very closely with your candidates, with your employees, and from the get-go. I think there is a number of wonderful things that employers can do. And a good example is what David talked about when you said, David, removing that requirement for a degree within the application process, absolutely brilliant. We love to see that within our own client partnerships. There is an additional level of I think, impact that organizations can achieve when they actually go out into society, working with communities to attract people without a degree. And so, for example, in our own experience, removing that requirement for a degree was absolutely transformational. It was even more transformational for us to stop waiting for applications to simply come through the portal, and rather to go out into communities and work with the people that we wanted to truly attract and empower. Because we found very early on that even if we remove certain requirements, people don't apply if they believe that they can't make it, or if they don't know that this is a field that they could potentially be successful in. When we work with especially young people from low income families or young people from low socioeconomic backgrounds, we often work with people who don't have parents in professional services, who don't have parents who speak the language. And Lauren, you talked about the importance of simplifying the language. They don't have exposure to role models in this sector within the family. And so it's particularly difficult for them to even imagine that this is an opportunity for them. So removing the requirement for a degree was great, but what was truly transformational from our point of view was to actually work with these young people and say that you can make it. This is what a career in this field actually looks like. Let me give you some examples. And so practically speaking, we do things like, employability workshops. We go out, we speak with people, we run employability fairs. We do lots of coaching and mentoring within the community. We bring people into the office space to give them a taste of what sort of roles we offer and the skill sets that we actually look for. And by doing so, we really build confidence in our candidates as well. It's a wonderful way to bring that storytelling to life, as David rightly said, really bring that story to life that you can make it in this field, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your parents did. There is a space in here that you can thrive, that you can be very successful at. So I think that's quite important, being present in your recruitment, being present in your engagement with people, actually investing in that community outreach.
Hugely important to make people understand that they're bringing value as well as just contributing to a job or a target is incredibly important. Just a couple of shout outs. Mark, thank you so much for sharing the information about the 6 green apprenticeships that have been handpicked by the industry in recognition of the coronation. So that's really good to see that that's on a higher scale, that there is a particular focus around that. And Brenda, particularly your point around the things around green skills and education, thank you for sharing that post in the chat. Please, once again, remember, if you have any questions, please place those in the chat. We are recording the session, so it will be available later. And if there's nothing we can answer, we'll follow up with individuals after the particular call. Now, David, I did say I was going to come back to you. I've changed my question ever so slightly. Don't worry, don't get scared. It's not a dodgy one, but it's more so around. It seems quite easy for businesses to measure their sustainability goals. They can work out how they're carbon offsetting or what they've done on particular initiatives. What are some of the things or struggles that they've had around measuring their social mobility goals and how they're achieving those? What are some of the metrics that they're putting in place, and what are the things that you're seeing in the market?
So there's there's various different scenarios where organizations can enter into, for example, the social mobility rankings that are out there, and AMS enter that as well. And I'm sure other organizations that you're very familiar with do too. But I think there needs to be a very clear definition that is across the whole of industry. And I think that would help organizations then formulate the strategies that they need to adopt. Obviously, every business is different, but what we're seeing with sustainability measures is organizations like EcoVadis or Certified B or science-based targets and carbon offsetting, that you've got a real metric that you can use. I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on I suppose it's more diversity, equity and inclusion statistics and alliances that organizations can work with. And and measure themselves against those. And it could be things such as, how many roles are we now recruiting that don't require a degree compared to when they used to? I know we keep going back to that degree aspect, but it is an enormous barrier to entry. I think people have said in the chat that not everybody can afford a 3-year course. So I think that's a really important aspect. I think there should be a way in which you can measure social mobility through making sure that you're recruiting people who've previously been unemployed. This is about adding to society. It's about making sure that you are taking people out of unemployment and giving them purpose in their life and an income, which is good for everybody. It's good for society. We're talking about this link between green skills and social mobility. Well, giving someone a job that has purpose and long-term career prospects, because this is only going to go further. It's going to grow and grow and grow, because there's no escape from this. This is the only option, right? We've got to do this. And as a result, anybody who's developing those green skills is going to be positioning themselves for a great career in the future. And actually, because there's a skills gap, and this is the great thing, because there's a skills gap, anybody with green skills is going to come at a premium. So supply and demand, guys, you're going to get a good wage for this kind of work because they're in demand. So I think it doesn't really answer your question in much detail there, because I haven't really thought in detail about social mobility measurements necessarily, but hopefully that gives you some context.
Oh, no, definitely. And I think given that we as a company have risen again on the social mobility foundation list, and it's not a boastful thing, it's just to say that actually we really care about this, and many of our partners care about it. There are specific measures in place which organizations can measure themselves and also set clear targets about what they're trying to achieve. Lauren, you're getting a lot of love for the simplicity of language, so that's good. We're definitely going to take that away from today. And Guy, we're definitely seeing the love around training and skilling people as we go through. I'm just very aware that we're coming to.
He'll come back, no worries.
Yes, I'm just very aware that we're coming towards the end of the session, and the gremlins in the computer seem to be getting a bit more hungry. I think it's because there was a rare bout of sun in London in the middle of the run, and the computer just can't handle it. So I think that's what the problem is. But no, apologies again for the technical difficulties on my end. As we come towards the end of the session, I do want to ask you each as a group just to think about, if you were, there's a conference happening, the Labour Party conference is happening, and so Keir Starmer's received a lot of stick for a lot of things, but there may be a challenge that we put out to Sir Keir about what we would like to see change within the education or the business sphere to help increase the awareness around social mobility and sustainability. And if you were in Sir Keir's position, what would be the one thing that you would change? So I'm giving you some time to think about that as we come around for the final set of questions. I just want to say to everybody on the call, thank you very much for joining. As we enter into the last 10 minutes of the time that we have together, please note you can still put your questions in the chat and we'll come back to those. And we have one specifically from Brenda, and this is open to everybody on the floor. Brenda said rightly, with social mobility in mind, green skill certifications aside, how can we connect this with the government focus on employability, and could job centres be really instrumental in making this happen? So any views on this, on Brenda's really good question about how do we go about outreach and promoting green skills?
I'm happy to kind of jump in. I think that's an absolute must. So the job centre network needs to be provided with all of the training and upskilling and reskilling that they can possibly have, so those representatives in those job centres themselves understand the nature of the green economy and then can talk with passion and interest and knowledge about all of the open opportunities that might be within that sector. Because there needs to be, people who are passionate and interested and advocates for this to get people excited to apply for these jobs. And it goes back to that point. A lot of these jobs, I think, are accessible with the right attitude and willingness to learn. So it's an amazing opportunity to take advantage of.
I think you made a really important point there, David. Having spent a lot of time in job centres, as well as doing a little bit in terms of interior designing, they are at the heart of lots of communities, right? And I think to Guy's earlier point, we have to get out of our ivory towers sometimes and get into these communities, because sometimes that's the easiest way to engage people. So thank you for both for raising that point. As we come towards the end, I'm going to come to you now to be the Prime Minister of the day. So you have now been inflated by the power of Alexander and Solution 8. We are AMS. We've elevated you to the position of Prime Minister for the day. And I want you to tell me what you would like to change. I'm glad to see that you're all smiling. So you like power. Power goes straight to your heart. So that's good. And I'll come to you first, Guy, in terms of what would you do as our female Prime Minister? What would you do in changing the world?
No pressure at all there, Tim. None whatsoever. In all seriousness, I think I genuinely believe that skills are the answer to this problem. I think we must be, as a country, incredibly strategic in the way that we truly invest and commit to skills in this area. One side of the story is, I think, democratizing access to skills to begin with, and that means removing barriers to entry by truly supporting and empowering people who traditionally don't get into these kind of jobs for different reasons. And I think the other aspect of the story is promoting continuous and sustainable upskilling and talent retention. The reason why I love the RTD or HTD solution is because I think it does it all, and I think it does it very effectively from almost a decade of working in this area. It gets people into this sort of employment, it trains people, and it pays people well in the process. There are lots of comments about wages, which I think is such an important point. It puts people in jobs actually working on real projects with real clients, and it promotes scalable impact, all of which I think is incredibly important. So skills and long-term impact for me together is the answer.
Fantastic. Well, great. I'm sure we can write a number of bits of policy around that one particular issue. So, Lauren, they've come to LinkedIn and they've said, we love you at LinkedIn, but you've got to run the country now. And the first thing on your agenda list is employability, sustainability, and social mobility. What are you enacting? What's going to be the first thing you're going to do?
If I can put that on LinkedIn, first of all, Tim, they love us. That would be wonderful. That would be a big ambition for me for them to say that. Listen, if I had a magic wand and I was wanting to be really practical about the things I really care about, which is, I think it's rooted in education from a very young age, I think what would benefit us all from the green space would be someone who was dedicated to converting all of this into language for children. So how do we convey all these messages and talk about these things from a political way to education? So kind of like CBBS and things like that, they convert news in for children. I feel there's a huge bit of work to be done about, kind of implementing that. But that's a very dream big, wave a magic wand type of thing. I think, if putting my political hat on for a second, it's the ability to have access to these things, not equality, but equitable access to these things as well. So a solution doesn't fit for all. One solution doesn't fit for every female either, because every female is a different thing. So the analogy we usually use is that I need a pair of shoes, but because you give me a size 10 doesn't mean to say I can wear those shoes, because I'm a size 6. You're a size 8, you're a size 2. So equitable policy in this area is really important. So how do we ensure that the policies we put in place, the objectives we have, the goals we put down on all of the government partners we've got on this call right now are equitable in that space? Because it's not the same for every industry. It's not the same for every location in the UK as well. Let's remember that different things will require different things. So I think that truly, to get people involved, you have to give everyone the ability to rise up at the same time. Very difficult to do, but something we should take very seriously from a government stance, I think.
Well, as our future PM, you have my vote, Lauren. Don't worry, you can do this. Love that. No, but thank you for sharing that, particularly about the equitable access. I think it's a very, very important point that not everybody is in the same starting position. David, somebody who's starting from the lead with our AMS hat on, where are you sitting as the now Prime Minister, not focusing on wallpaper, focusing on changing the world?
I would like to announce that there should be a day every year where chocolate is free.
You get my vote doubly now. Sorry, Lorna.
I think everybody would be happier, and I think that would be a positive thing. No, the thing for me is about supercharging collaboration. So guess what? The government aren't that bright always, and they need help. They need help from educators. They need help from business. They need help from communities. So I think there needs to be a supercharge on collaboration across the board, because we're all in this together. And there has to be an opportunity for all the amazing talent of the UK to come together in whatever forum it might be. Might sound very grand, but basically, just inviting a few business people to the Labour Party conference isn't going to cut it. We need to do it much more broadly than that, because we're in a bit of a crisis here. We need to get out of it. Let's get all of the talented people from every sector of society to come up with the solutions together.
With free chocolate, yeah. Don't forget the chocolate piece. It's very important. Bribery is always the answer. But no, in all seriousness, I think lots of us, whether it's being within our organisations or looking at from an outside perspective at some areas of government, there has been a silo mentality along lots of things where not everything is interwoven seamlessly, and actually it could be more efficiently done if that was the case. So actually, I'm afraid to tell you all, you haven't got the job. You're going to have to share it in collaboration and do it all together. So that's what you have to do. It's the perfect partnership that we've found. But for everybody on the call, thank you so much for giving up your time. We understand and appreciate how precious that is. And we hope that you've taken some things away from this, which will help either do what you're doing or do it differently, or give some insight into how other organizations and individuals have done it. Our partners, and thank you so much for everybody on the call who has joined this amazing panel. Thank you for giving up your time. But I suppose in conclusion, investing in the future of the green workforce, we have what I'd say is a unique opportunity, right? To do a number of different things and to do them well. We can advance our sustainability agenda, but at the same time, improve our social mobility, improve the opportunities that we give to other people in terms of the jobs that they have and the career options that they may have. That cliche term of it being a win-win situation is one where actually there is a real opportunity to do that without cringing and thinking it's cheesy. We really do have the opportunity. David, you mentioned earlier that there is a real gap, and actually that's the opportunity to get a different set of people into our workforces. Lauren, you really clearly talked about equitable access, making sure we meet people where they are, going out into the communities and finding the talent, but making it simple how we talk about those opportunities. And Gaia, you were so passionate about making sure that the model that we use is one that's going to give back value, not only to the business, but to the individuals, by making sure we're respecting people in terms of what they need to be paid, but also making sure we can get them back contributing to the business as quickly as possible. You as an audience have found it useful and helpful. And thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, it is recorded. We will send out the recording to everybody. But just as a last thing, please, a massive round of applause for our wonderful panelists. Gaia, David and Lauren, thank you so much for your time. We'll be sending out any information to anybody afterwards. Enjoy the rest of your day.